But they said there was a litigation risk and you moved forward with it anyway. And not only that, but you also sought orders from judges making it so those who were having their records seized would not know about it. And you even didn't tell those judges that it was members of Congress whose records you were going after, in apparent contravention of a federal statute saying that a telephone provider for a Senate office shall not be barred from providing notice that the records had been requested. Now, if you sought to do that today, would you be able to get away with that, with asking the judges for a non-disclosure order without telling them these are members of Congress?
When we secured these toll record subpoenas, it was done consistent with department policy. You're correct in that that policy has since changed.
They changed the policy based upon the actions that you took. Similarly, you issued a gag order against President Trump that the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals vacated as overbroad. Is that correct?
Well, the D.C. Court of Appeals, in passing on that order, found that it was justified. They narrowed the order, but they confirmed that the phenomenon—
They narrowed the order because it was overbroad. In addition to that, you sought an early trial date that the district court rejected, and when you presented your prosecution memo to Attorney General Garland, it's been reported that he was visibly unimpressed and expressed First Amendment concerns. So, Mr. Smith, looking at the record, I see that you were reversed and rebuked by the Department of Justice itself, by the Attorney General, by the Solicitor General, by multiple district court justices, judges, by the Court of Appeals, and by the U.S. Supreme Court itself. So my final question is, do you believe that you made any mistakes? Do you have any regrets as to how you conducted this investigation?
If I have any regret, it would be not expressing enough appreciation for my staff who work so hard in these investigations. We followed the facts and the law. These people who work for me sacrificed endlessly and have endured way too much for just doing their job. So if anything, I wish that I had thanked them.
Time of the gentleman.
No mistakes. There's that humility. Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Yeah, time of the gentleman's right. The chair now recognizes the ranking member for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the good gentleman from California certainly knows, because he was a student of mine, that lawyers go to court and sometimes they win motions and sometimes they lose motions, and there's no crime in any of that. And I'm just sorry that you had to be lectured about humility and restraint by a politician, because we might not be best poised to lecture you on those particular virtues. But let's go to the toll record, since that's been raised, Mr. Smith. First of all, Congress has allowed toll records to be subpoenaed. This committee has actually tried to limit it over the years, and the senators who are whining the most over on the Republican side in the Senate, they never went along with our determination to try to limit the government's ability to subpoena toll records. So it's perfectly lawful what you did. Explain, why did you want those toll records?
We wanted to conduct a thorough investigation of the matters that was assigned to me, including attempts to interfere with the lawful transfer of power. The conspiracy that we were investigating, it was relevant to get toll records to understand the scope of that conspiracy, who they were seeking to coerce, who they were seeking to influence, who was seeking to help them.
And that's normal investigative practice, right?
In conducting a criminal investigation, securing non-content toll records, as you described, is a common practice in almost any complex conspiracy.
Okay, let's go to something else that I've been hearing over the last week by our colleagues as they've eagerly anticipated your arrival here. They've been saying that there's some kind of First Amendment defense that Donald Trump would have had to the crimes you indicted him for. Is there a valid First Amendment defense to defrauding the public? Is there a valid First Amendment defense to disrupting a federal proceeding? Is there a valid First Amendment defense to violating the voting rights of the people and cheating the public out of a fair election?
The First Amendment is something that we took seriously in our investigation, but the First Amendment does not protect speech that facilitates a crime. Speech that is used to facilitate a crime, a fraud crime in particular, is not protected under the First Amendment. The Supreme Court precedent on that is clear. This is an issue that we litigated before the district court, and the district court ruled, as I just stated, that it is not in fact protected.
And the case law is perfectly clear on this, right? All frauds are perpetrated by speech, right?
Yes.
All conspiracies are perpetrated by speech. So just because your criminal conduct is brigaded with speech doesn't somehow mean you've got a First Amendment defense against trying to overthrow the government. I mean, the people who attacked the police officers on January 6th were chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." I suppose that was political speech, or they were saying, "Stop the steal." Does that mean they've got a First Amendment defense to violent assault against the officers?
It does not.
William Barr, by the way, was somebody who was perfectly clear about that. Donald Trump's own attorney general said, there's no freedom of speech that you have to engage in a conspiracy, to overthrow an election, to commit crime. He was perfectly clear about that. Back in those days, in fact, lots of people on that side of the aisle, including my good friend, the chairman, denounced the violence that took place on January 6th. The cat's got their tongue these days. My friend Chairman Jordan said, what happened last week was terrible, was tragic. It's as wrong can be, he said. Republicans, we know all political violence is wrong. I asked my friend Chairman Jordan at a rules hearing, are you also not interested in what happened to us on January 6th? He said, of course, everyone's interested in holding people accountable who did wrong. The FBI is doing that. The Justice Department is doing that, appropriately so. What do you think about the attack on the Department of Justice and the Special Counsel for doing your jobs?
I think the attack is unjustified. I think the people who worked with me as career public servants are people, they're part of the reason I've been a prosecutor for so long is to work with people like that, not just the prosecutors in my office, but also the agents, FBI agents who are heroes, who have served their country not only as agents, but also overseas. I think those attacks are unwarranted based on the facts, and I think that they have no basis in who we are as Americans, as a country. I don't see attacking people like that as anything appropriate.
Thank you, and Mr. Chairman, I yield back to you.
The gentleman yields back. Mr. Smith, is Cassidy Hutchinson a liar? She was their star witness, January 6th committee, their star witness in one of those staged and choreographed hearings they paid the former president of ABC News to put together. She was, in fact, the only witness at this special prime time hearing, Tuesday, June 28th, 2022, 8 o'clock in the evening, and she told some stories. I mean, these were some stories. She talked about President lunged across the back seat, grabbed the steering wheel, tried to drive the car to the Capitol. And I just want to know, you think she was lying?
Chairman Jordan, my assessment of that particular issue is that with respect to the testimony about the president lunging towards the driver, my recollection of her testimony about that is that it was secondhand. She said she'd heard that from somebody.
You familiar with the name Tony Ornato?
I'm sorry.
You familiar with the name Tony Ornato?
Yes.
White House Deputy Chief of Operations, Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations, right? You remember what he said about it?
As I sit here right now, I do not.
Yeah, he said it didn't happen. How about Bobby Engel? You familiar with that name?
Yes, I am.
Secret Service agent who was actually in the car that day. You know what he said? He said it didn't happen. And they both said the first time they ever heard this story was when Ms. Hutchinson testified in the primetime hearing as their star witness of the January 6th committee. By the way, did you ever confirm her testimony about this particular incident?
We conducted, as I said before, our own independent investigation of all aspects of the case that we thought was relevant. We, attorneys from my office.
Did you ever confirm it? That's a simple question.
Well, we interviewed, or I should say attorneys in my office before.
Did you ever confirm the president leaping across the seat, grabbing the steering wheel, this whole concoction she brought up in the January 6th hearing. Did you ever confirm that?
Right.